Hi everybody, this is the video for the information for the block days, February 28th and March 1st, 2018. So today we're going to work on section 8.2, which is all about parallelograms. So we're going to learn what a parallelogram is and what are some rules of parallelograms, and then we're going to practice finding sides of and angles in parallelograms. And your homework will be IXL level L N.4 properties of parallelograms, and as always, score 70 for full credit. Okay, so what is a parallelogram? Okay, a parallelogram is a quadrilateral. So it has four sides with both pairs of opposite sides parallel. Okay, hence the name parallelogram. So that didn't come out very well. So I'm going to rewrite it. So the way we write a parallelogram is we put a little square kind of that's skewed that looks like a parallelogram, and then the vertices of parallelogram. So here you have the little parallelogram, and then you have PQRS. So PQRS. Okay. So what the definition is telling us is that QR, okay, here's QR, is parallel, that's the sign for parallel, to PS, which is that right there. So these guys are parallel. Okay, change colors. It's also telling us that line QP, which is right here, is parallel to line RS. And it turns out those are very powerful statements when you have those two lines being parallel. And you might remember when we were working with angles, how if you had a parallel line and you had a line traversing it, a traversal, then you were able to make lots of assumptions about the angles. And so it kind of works similarly when you're working with parallelograms. So it turns out we can make 4 statements about parallelograms, and that's what we're going to do next. Okay. So it turns out that when you have this parallelogram with the pairs of sides being parallel, the opposite sides of a parallelogram are congruent. So this side, QR, is congruent to PS, which is right there. Okay, I'll change colors. And QP is congruent to RS. And remember, congruent means the same. So their lengths are equal. So if this side is 5, then this side has a length of 5. Okay, you don't know anything about the other sides because I didn't tell you that. But if I told you that this length was 10, you would also know that this side, QR, is 10 also. So what works with sides in this case is also good with angles. So the opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. So here angle Q is congruent to angle S. Okay. And then changing colors. Angle P is congruent to angle R. Okay. So both the sides and the opposite sides and the opposite angles of a parallelogram are congruent. So if I told you that this angle P was equal to 30 degrees, then you would know that angle R is 30 degrees. Okay? So those are the two first statements, very important to remember. So let's practice with these a little bit. So we need to find the values of x and y. So here's my x right here. And so we know that line AB is congruent to line DC. So we can make the statement x plus 4, which is that line length of AB, is equal to the length of DC, which is 12. In order to find x, we just subtract 4 from both sides, and x is equal to 8. Okay. Now, we also have to find y. Here's my y. And y is opposite of this angle, which is labeled 65 degrees. So we know they are congruent. So their measures are equal. So y is equal to 65 degrees. Okay, that was pretty easy. So let's make it a little bit more challenging. So here's my x, my 2x, and the angle opposite it is 50 degrees. So I know that 2x is going to equal to 50 degrees. Divide by both sides by 2, and you know that x is equal to 25 degrees. Okay. Now let's look at y. Here's my y. So y plus 3 is opposite to 18. So we know that y plus 3 is equal to 18. Subtract 3 from both sides, and y is equal to 15. Okay, pretty easy, huh? Okay, so let's look at the next statements. Okay, statement 3 is the consecutive angles of a parallelogram are supplementary. So consecutive means that they are next to each other. And supplementary, if you remember, means that they equal 180 degrees. So here we have angle Q and angle R are supplementary. Notice they have the x and the y. Okay, so angle Q and angle R are going to equal 180 degrees. Okay, also angle Q and angle P are next to each other. So angle Q plus angle P is also going to be equal to 180 degrees. Okay, we have no idea what X and P are, or Q, P, and R are right now. All we know is that if you add them together, you're going to get 180 degrees. And here we have this X. Okay, so we have angle S, and we know that angle S plus angle Y is going to equal 180 degrees. And we know that angle S plus angle Y, S plus P, angle S plus angle P is equal to 180 degrees. So let's do a quick problem. So we're given that angle A is equal to 51. And we know by that second statement that the angle across from it is also going to be 51. Okay, so angle A, angle B, angle C, and angle D. So we know angle A is 51 degrees, and we know angle C is 51 degrees. Okay, so let's look at angle B, and I'll change colors there. So let's look at angle B. So angle A and angle B are consecutive. Angle A and angle B are consecutive. They're next to each other. Okay, so given this statement, angle A plus angle B is equal to 180 degrees. So we know what angle A is, so 51 degrees plus angle B is 180 degrees. Okay, we subtract 51 from both sides, and we know angle B is equal to 180 minus 51. 10 minus 1 is 9. 75 is 12. Okay, angle B is 129 degrees. So angle B is 129. Well, if angle B is equal to 129, then the angle opposite is also equal to 129. And now we know angle D is equal to 129 degrees. And so knowing just that one angle of a parallelogram, we figured out all the other three angles in that same parallelogram, just using those three statements, or two of the three statements that, that we learned about. Okay, so let's look at the final. So this one is kind of interesting. So if you draw the diagonals of a parallelogram, so here's one diagonal is QS. Here's another. I'll change colors. Another. Okay, so those are the diagonals of the parallelogram. And remember, it's a quadrilateral, so there are two diagonals. Okay, so you can remember that from what we studied before. So what this is telling us now is that these parallelograms bisect each other. Okay, so here's point M. So the lengths of the lines on either side of M are going to be the same. Okay, so we have PM. PM is congruent to RM. Okay, and we know QM is congruent to SM. Okay, so this does not say that PM, okay, PM and QM, okay, it says nothing about those. You don't know anything about their lengths at this point. Okay, all you know is that PM is congruent to PM is congruent to RM, and you know QM is congruent to SM. Okay, you don't know what they are, you just know they're congruent. Okay, so let's practice. So here we have a line 2N, and we know from this statement that this line and this line are going to be congruent because they're bisected by this other diagonal right here in the middle. So we know 2N is equal to 9 minus N. So I'm going to add N to both sides. We get 2N plus N is equal to 9. 2N plus 1N is 3N equal 9. N is equal to 3. Okay, now we know the half of this diagonal, okay, is congruent to this half of the diagonal by that statement. So we know that 16 is equal to 4m. Divide both sides by 4, and we get 4 equals m. Okay, pretty easy. So just remember that the green line here and the orange line here, all we know is that they bisect each other. Okay, we're not making any relationship between this line and this line. Okay, the relationship only is between this half of the diagonal and then the other half of the diagonal. Okay, so let's work some problems. Okay, in this problem, we're finding D. Okay, we're going to find D and we're going to find Z. Okay, so here's my D. Okay, and D is part of this angle here, and the angle opposite is equal to 105. That's convenient. So we know by that second statement that D minus 21 is going to be equal to 105. So we add 21 to both sides. And we have D is equal to 126. Pretty easy, huh? Okay. Now we have two sides. So one side, oh, here's my Z. Okay, and Z happens to be opposite to this other side, which is 20. So we can set up an equation that says Z minus 8 is equal to 20. So we're going to add 8 to both sides, and Z is going to be equal to 28. Okay, so here we have one like we worked earlier. So finding the measures of all the missing angles of all, measures of all the missing angles. Okay, so just like we did before, we've got angle X, okay, and directly across from it is angle Z. So angle X is equal to 119 degrees, okay, and angle Z must also be equal to 119 degrees. Okay. Now we know by the third statement that the angles that are next to each other are supplementary, and they're equal to 180 degrees. So we know angle W is next to angle X, okay, and remember that next to is the same as saying that they're consecutive, okay, and so that means that angle W plus angle X is going to equal 180 degrees. Okay, we know that angle X is equal to 119. So we subtract 119 from both sides, and we have angle W is equal to 180 minus 119. 10 to the power 9 is 1. 7 to the power 1 is 6. W is 61 degrees. And so if angle W is equal to 61 degrees, then what is its opposite angle equal to? Well, by the third statement, angle Y must also be equal to 61 degrees. Okay? And let's do the third one. Okay, so we're going to find X and Y. So here is a parallelogram. It's got two diagonals. So we know that the halves of the diagonals are equal to each other. So we'll do X first. So we know 3X and 12 are congruent, so 3x is equal to 12. Divide both sides by 3, and x is equal to 4. Okay. Now let's look at the other diagonal. So we know that this length is equal to this length. And so we know 5y is equal to 4y plus 4. Okay, so we need to get all the y's on one side. So we're going to subtract 4y from both sides. Okay, 4y minus 4y, that goes away. 5y minus 4y is 1y, so we just write the y is equal to 4. And you're done. Okay, I think, yep, that was the last one. So, give your homework a shot. Feel free to ask any questions. You should be able to whiz through it pretty quickly, though, as you know, the IXL gets a little bit tricky. So work hard on it and get at least 70 points. You get extra credit if you do more than 70. So feel free to do that. And that's it for today.